Good afternoon from Kingston, New York. I'm Eric Francis Coppolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer, here with a special, as in unplanned edition of Starcast from Planet Waves. I'm here mostly on the occasion of Mercury stationing direct early on the morning of the 7th. Let's just get exactly what time that's going to happen. It's going to happen at 6:07 a.m. Standard Time. That would mean 7:07 a.m. New York Daylight Time. So at the moment, we are right in the thick of what some call the Mercury storm. Mercury has been retrograde since the Ides of March on the 15th. And it has been, interesting and exciting as usual. Like a lot of things at the moment, this Mercury retrograde straddles between Aries and Pisces. So we're seeing that now with 4 of the 8 planets, quote-unquote planets, meaning the classical, traditional, whatever you want to call it, astronomically accepted planets. The 4 planets that are going back and forth between Aries and Pisces right now are Mercury and Venus and Saturn and Neptune. Of course, Saturn and Neptune take a much slower path around the sun, but nonetheless, their trajectory is to be working over that Pisces-Aries cusp, which, of course, as you know, brings in the Aries point, the first degree of Aries, the position of the sun on the spring equinox, the sidereal vernal point, or the SVP, which is the intersection between the personal and the collective. And as I've said no fewer than 10 times on this program, what we are seeing now, what we are experiencing now, is some kind of a thing that has a lot of connection between the individual existence and collective existence. And quite frankly, at least here in the United States, but really now what happens in the United States affects a lot of places, as we are seeing in real time go on. It has been a complete shit show. Not only since January 20th, when Trump was sworn in for the second time, but especially over the past 3 weeks with all kinds of stuff going on, especially, for example, this whole business around tariffs. Now, it seems all of a sudden like everybody knows what a tariff is, even though the issue rarely comes up. You rarely hear about it, but suddenly it's all over the news. And I will tell you that a standard dictionary definition of a tariff is a tax on imported goods. And it's like a duty, for example. Like let's say you go to Switzerland and you buy a watch in Switzerland and you've got to present a receipt for the watch, and the watch costs $1,000. If there's a 20% duty, you have to pay $200 to bring that watch into the United States. So we're maybe familiar with this when we send gifts to people in foreign countries, and it's sometimes not even worth doing because the tariff can be so high. Regardless of the economics of this, which are in fact somewhat ridiculous, I want to point something out, which is that in my experience and in my view, being the person with the continuity of memory, the daykeeper of these kinds of events, it is fairly plain to me that what is going on is just some kind of an externally distracting bullshit theater. In other words, what we are seeing right now, the word tariff is thrown around. It's all over it. Trade war. There's a trade war now going on. A trade war is in fact a form of a war, as I explained on the last edition, which I will link. A tariff is the equivalent of a military blockade of the port. In previous times, when you couldn't do all this stuff electronically, port blockades are a form of warfare to block or slow down the flow of trade going both in and out. And there's all kinds of excuses being raised, and we know that Elon Musk is one of the people who is not only behind this, but he's the representative of the people who are behind it. And in programs later in the week, I'll be getting into more precise details of who and what this is about, and how and why this is happening. In other words, providing documentation and some pins in the map, and not really just kind of venting my opinion, which is easy to do. It's easy to vent opinion, especially if you've never looked up the word tariff in a dictionary and you have never contemplated, much less studied any form of macroeconomics. You know that they're not supposed to be quick hit, one-time things, unless it's some form of a show or a threat of some kind. But there is something I want to point out to you. Now, as most of you know, in addition to being your friendly neighborhood astrologer, I am your friendly neighborhood, internationally accredited investigative reporter, and I don't just mean merely somebody who types shit on the internet. I'm an investigative reporter from the era of print, newspapers, and magazines, when my articles had to be reviewed by an editorial hierarchy and lawyers to make sure they were fit to go in. I don't mean to quote the New York Times here, but that it was safe to print them, to commit them to print, because they were going to do damage to the reputations of people and corporations. And so I am, when I say I'm an investigative reporter, I mean that when I go to press, my training is to prepare for a judge and jury, to prepare for the article to be reviewed by a judge and jury, which means to prepare the article to a very high factual and legal standard. Okay, so all that said, chest beating out of the way, now you know that I'm a big gorilla in a world of, whatever. I want to point something out, which is that 5 years ago, in the last year of the first presidency of Donald Trump, there was a very unusual and very interesting Mercury retrograde, and that Mercury retrograde spanned between February 16th and March 9th, 2020. And let's see, 20. Right, there was a Mercury retrograde in the late winter of 2020, a time you may remember. And the retrograde also spanned between two signs, but that was between Pisces and Aquarius, and the current one that we are seeing spans between Aries and Pisces, and what they have in common is that they're happening in the late winter, early spring, and that they span between two signs. But the Mercury retrograde in the spring of late winter, of 2020, acted as a kind of a scrim, a shield, a cover for the implementation of the quote-unquote antivirus measures. Now, there was no virus. There was an economic crisis going on. The economic crisis manifested in 2019, something called the repo market, a kind of a meta bank level thing, needed to be recapitalized. They needed to inject a lot of cash into the system, but because they had just done that in 2008, they couldn't say that it was about a cash injection into the system. Well, didn't you just recapitalize all the banks? Didn't this just happen in living recent memory? Yeah, well, it had just happened about 12 years earlier in 2008. And that's, everybody remembers TARP and all that, and the banks failing, too big to fail and all that stuff. Well, by 2019, they were all failing again. And there's a big problem with leveraged debt, like really serious problem. This never once has broken the surface of the news. And they couldn't do it as a bank recapitalization, so they had to do it as some other thing. And it happened that there would be the perfect storm of the introduction of a new vaccine technology, which came with the rebranding of the what we used to call the flu, and also a massive takeover of the physical reality by hijacking everything to the internet. And so all the internet companies approximately double, whether we're talking Zoom or Google or all these major companies and the pharmaceutical companies, then have a massive boon. The virus, of course, was MN 908-947, created by Fan Wu in China, paid for to the tune of $900,000 by Bill Gates, injected into the phony, non-existent test called the polymerase chain reaction, which maybe can find a molecule, but it can't find a molecule of something that doesn't exist in nature. So every positive result off of the PCR had to be a false positive. You may understand something about that if you've been listening to me for any length of time. And I am happy to come on anyone's podcast and explain this. And if you call me up, I will explain it. Or if you write your questions, I will answer them in a program or something like that. But what I'm really here to tell you is that at the moment, I see a lot of people taking seriously this action by Trump and Musk, which is going to bail the economy out and all of this, and it's going to help pay off the national debt and all that. We are not going to pay off the national debt with a tax on sneakers and Swiss watches. That's what they're doing. That's what this is about. It's a tax on imported sneakers and Swiss watches and food and toilet paper and whatever we happen to import, which is almost everything. There's not really very much that's made in the United States anymore. I mean, Bob Dylan wrote a song about this like in 1980 called Union Sundown, which basically laments the fact that there is nearly nothing except like mag lights. A couple of things are made in the United States. So, yeah, I always love the companies where there's actually something made in the USA. It happens to include Planet Waves, Astrology made in the USA, all natural, no artificial ingredients, no artificial intelligence. We're not paying off the national debt with a tax on sneakers or imported pots and pans from China. It's not happening. But people are falling for this psychological operation. Just as we believed between February 16th and March 9th that there really was a virus. They just kept saying virus, 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 virus. And then a couple of days later, on the 13th, Trump declares a national emergency on March 13th, 2020. We mark that anniversary with an edition of Planet Waves FM. And then, as the next couple of years unfolded and we began to check the facts and check the mortality rates and check all the claims of the existence of a virus, and we started to find out that there really was nothing going on in the hospitals and that 90% of the people who died had, on average, 4 other illnesses. 90% of the people who were said to have died of so-called coronavirus disease 2019 had, on average, according to CDC data, 4 other quote-unquote comorbidities, meaning some form of a serious illness or something like obesity, diabetes, cancer, something like this. And this all happened under the confusion, under the scrim of Mercury retrograde in Pisces and Aquarius. And they had all their plans made, and there's all this shuffling around going on in the last 2 weeks of February and the first week and a half of March, and then the Mercury goes direct, and then poof, national emergency, and they shut the world down in what seemed like 5 minutes. First, northern Italy, all of Italy, first some places in the United States, all of the United States, the rest of the world in 3 weeks. Even if you believe there was a virus, there's no way that a virus can spread into every town and city in the world in 3 weeks. It's not possible. That's not what a virus does. And there was actually no outbreak of anything in China, as demonstrated by the fact that when you look at all the claimed early cases, they're all solitary cases. It's not like the whole village got sick and died. It's just one person there and one person there and another person there, and then they claim that there's a virus, et cetera, et cetera. And what I'm here to say is that we are now under similar conditions where a whole bunch of stuff is being rolled in under the fog of Mercury retrograde in Aries and Pisces, under the mental confusion, deception, delusion, preying on people's ignorance. Nobody knew anything about viruses in 2020. Nobody knows anything about tariffs and or executive orders in 2025. I mean, this administration has not even, let's see, January 20th to February to March, hasn't even been 2.5 months. Basically, it's been 2.5 months, and there are federal agents patrolling the streets of my little armpit of a town, looking for people to deport. Like, really? Like, this is gonna help the country in some way? So, well, what we saw late last week was this imposition of a massive blockade of other countries, 36% taxes, and it is against all of our trading partners. The United States' trading partners, all the places that over the past generation, manufacturing has been outsourced to. And remember that the whole Trump cabal campaigned on 2 chickens in every pot. We will protect you. We're going to make your life better. We're going to solve all these problems. Corrupt Joe Biden, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we've just experienced 25% inflation since 2020. Wages have not gone up, and now now the only people who will pay for these tariffs are middle class and poor people, because rich people, it doesn't matter. The cost of groceries doesn't matter when you've got millions or billions of dollars in the bank. It's completely irrelevant. So, I think that the slapping the tariff on Switzerland, I mean, what is imported from Switzerland? It's like Swiss Army knives and Swiss watches and cutlery, and slapping a tariff on an island off the coast of Antarctica inhabited by penguins where no human being has gone for 10 years. That's included on the list of places that have had a tariff imposed on them. This is completely unhinged. And it's not what it's being made out to be. It is a complete show. So while you're watching all your pro and con videos and you're going, oh, I want to watch Fox and I want to watch MSNBC, and some wise old fart on Fox is like, well, let me explain to you how this is really going to work. And then some wise old fart on MSNBC says, well, now let me explain to you how it's going to really work. And then they're taking pro and con positions. This is pro and con positions on a situation. That does not matter. And the Mercury retrograde, especially all this dancing back and forth between Aries and Pisces and the repeated conjunctions to Neptune of Mercury and Venus and upcoming Saturn, all those things are making a conjunction to Neptune. This is highly cautionary that we are being lied to. But ignorance is a kind of an addiction. And we all want to think that these people are doing something that is supposed to be helping. Hope springs eternal. And a lot of people have invested quite a bit of their faith in Drumpf, who, by the way, I mean, presided over 4 casinos going out of business. I mean, have you ever been to a casino? Tell me, how much money did you win in a casino? I mean, I know one guy who's a really good poker player. Okay, but he practically invests his life in playing poker. You don't win at poker from luck. And you could sit at the slot machine for 2 years and putting in tokens or quarters, and you'd win $50. And Trump presided over 4 of them going out of business, and this is the guy we think is doing something to help out. So I'm here to caution you that there is a whole other reality behind this little limited stage, where people are debating. They're doing 2 things. They're either debating pro and con tariffs, pro and con throw all the Mexicans and Costa Ricans out, or they're like, I cannot stand this. This is so ridiculous. I can't take this. I can't take another minute of it. I'm going to tune the whole thing out and ignore it. And both approaches work perfectly well for the people who are doing something completely different than what you think that they are doing. All right, I have some astrology for you that is more intended for personal use, but first I want to say that all of my programming is commercial free, and it is sponsored by our customers, our subscribers, and my private astrology consulting clients. On television advertising, if you're wondering what TV advertising costs, 30-second spots range from $10,000 to $50,000 or more. And, for example, Fox News, a 30-second spot can cost $100,000 to $500,000 for 30 seconds. That pays for a lot of programming. So you are my audience in affinity, right? You are people who are here to listen to me and because I have something to say about astrology. So that's why I feel confident saying, please subscribe to the work that I do if you benefit from it. If you don't benefit from it, then definitely don't subscribe. But then I wonder why you listen. What I subscribe to is what I think is good quality work, and what I benefit from reading, like the John Rappaport Substack and the Sam Bailey Substack and a few others. And then I have most excellent astrology products that are designed to be affordable. Yes, you can work with me for $555 for a 75-minute session, or you can get a 75-minute reading for $33 at the Astrology Boutique, and price is not really a measure of value, but the whole concept of Planet Waves is to bring the very best astrology to you for an affordable price and to provide a subscription service that really offers about 10 different services in one. So all my stuff is available at the Astrology Boutique. You will find that I'm a very responsive, famous person on the internet. I like to answer my own phone and answer my own emails, and we're only 1 degree of separation. A guy named Elijah answers most of the emails, but he knows when to copy me in, and you write to me in my personal address, anything with an EFC, and nobody sees it but me, and I will do my very best to take care of you. All right, let's talk about what's going on in the planets. So Mercury stations direct at a little bit past 7 o'clock Eastern Time on Monday morning. The shadow phase ends on April 26th. So that means when Mercury leaves the territory where it was retrograde and enters new territory, that's on 4/26. While this is going on, Venus made a conjunction to Saturn over the weekend. So Saturn's hanging out in late Pisces, and Mercury is there, and Venus is there. And so Venus is making a series of 3 conjunctions to Pisces. The second one happened over the weekend. The station direct of Venus is happening in a conjunction to Saturn. So that's going to clear fairly soon, but it's not over until it's over, as we all know with these retrograde planets. So pay attention, and this means proceed with care and caution where all negotiations, discussions, and communications involving both business and personal material are concerned. There are very likely to have been some meltdowns and some misunderstandings and family dramas and stuff like that under this very complicated situation of Mercury and Venus retrograde, Neptune changing signs into Aries for the first time since before the war between the states, the United States Civil War. That and alone, as I explained in Thursday's edition, which I will link, it's a very big deal. But the caution of all of this thing, all the stuff combined, is to allow the situations that you're in to work themselves out. Give misunderstanding space and time to clear out. Where there is Pisces and where there's Neptune involved and Saturn involved in conjunctions with retrograde inner planets, there can be quite a bit of distraction in the way. There can be quite a bit of confusion and miscommunication and misunderstanding, and these things end up being productive when we use them for sincerely introspective purposes, for the purpose of bringing out something that may have been concealed. And as you know, one of my, I think, most relevant interpretations, maybe you don't know this, but I try to say it every time I talk about Mercury retrograde, is that one of the beautiful things, particularly about Mercury stationing direct, is that it has this, there's often this experience of concealed information coming out. The truth in some form, the underlying reality of a situation coming out. And so that is the main reason to wait for Mercury direct prior to making large commitments, for example, signing a contract of some kind, because you don't know all of the variables. You don't know often what you don't know. And humans are famous for not only not knowing what they don't know, but for not thinking that there's anything that they don't know. People assume, that they know everything. And, I'd like to know how many experts on tariffs have ever read a book about tariffs. But the human realm is much more sensitive, and it is much more pliable, and the opinions that we have in the human realm can become the subject of judgments and the basis for making decisions when there might be quite a bit that is not known and that hasn't come to light. And so my sense of the next week or so, which includes Mercury stationing direct on the 7th and Venus stationing direct 5 days later on the 12th. What day of the week is that? I think that might be Friday. This whole date thing always confuses me. But April 12th is Saturday. Passover begins. So there is a one inner planet stations direct in Pisces on Monday, another planet stations direct in Pisces on Saturday. Remember, they are both involved with conjunctions to Saturn and with conjunctions to Neptune. So there are larger forces involved, and it is very helpful to have a sense of what those larger forces are and who exactly is behind them. And that is what I have to say for you and to you on this Sunday afternoon here. Slightly muggy, halfway between warm and chilly, Kingston, New York. I am planning to be back with the Thursday subscriber edition of Planet Waves and Starcast on Thursday, and it's looking like a new long edition of Planet Waves FM on Friday, the 11th, approximately timed with the new moon in Libra. A very exciting and complicated, full moon in Libra. Sun's still in Aries, moon will be full in Libra, and there's all kinds of other planets involved. So I will have more to say about that as maybe as the week develops, but definitely in the Thursday edition with the horoscope corresponding directly with those events. And I continue to do my best to bring you an interpretation of the news from a personal and spiritual point of view. Thank you for listening to and being a customer or subscriber to Planet Waves, and let's go out once again with I consider to be the perfect ambient piece of music by Kristen Williams called Sitting Still. Lots of love, and bye for now.